Hello everyone, Agion here. This time I want to talk about something different. In Steel Division, there are two divisions I would say are a bit overperforming, so I would like to discuss about them, how to properly adjust them with some small nerfs, maybe even a couple of small buffs in some other areas, but generally how to properly balance them in comparison to the rest of the divisions. The two main divisions, well, the first major division I would like to talk about is 4th Armored. Yes, 4th Armored, the one that everybody says is generally on the too strong of side, to say the least. Generally, it comes along with say, fucking armor's OP, yada yada yada, which I sort of fall along in that category, no offense. So, I would like to first talk about why 4th Armored is so strong. I would say, primarily, while people generally say as it falls off a little bit on Battle Phase C when the heavier German armor comes on in, I would say the major problem why 4th Armored does so well is their Battle Phase A. I've always had the philosophy of the initial and early game is more important than the late game itself and the items that come in the late game as well. Because the early game dictates the battle of how each side's going to come back, how they're going to fight, and so on and so forth, and what options they have. First off, let's talk about infantry. 4th Armored has 4 5-man squads of worth 20 points. They are very strong, they have good long range, very good medium range, and like with any allied infantry unit, they have pretty good close range as well. I would say the biggest, it's not the bars or the fact there are 2 of them. 2nd Infantry has these exact same rifles as well. These riflemen has quite a bit of potency as well. But these grands. But I would say the main problem is not the fact that these infantry units are very good, they're very well rounded. They're not exactly overpowered, I would say. I would say the fact that it's because you can get up to 15 3 cards of 5 in Battle Phase A in the Armored Division. Yes, this deck is designed around quote-unquote light armor. However, it has some pretty good late game and early game assets are medium armored as well. So what I would generally say how to properly nerf this section is just remove one of these cards of rifles. That's it. I would say that would actually really limit the effectiveness in the Battle Phase A because people just spam out these rifles everywhere because they're relatively cheap and very effective for what they do. They still have Army LMG rifles, which are effective long-range squad to rely on for long-range engagements, but they just have so much riflemen that are so effective in cities. I would just, and most Axis decks really have trouble in fighting the city. In fact, the 4th Armored, if I were to pull up a spreadsheet quickly, I had one, oh, it has to, of course, go minimize. The 4th Armored has literally, when it comes to Battle Phase A, the 5th most infantry available than any other allied deck. That's in Battle Phase A anyways. This Armored deck has more infantry than some other infantry decks. Which is fine, they are pretty effective also as well. I mean, number 1 is Red Devils. They don't really have much other infantry support. Like, they have Tetrarchs in Battle Phase A, which are more or less not exactly good. But they are reasonable. You got Poland, who has a bunch of infantry squads as well, even more. They have 24 over the 21 in the 4th Armored. However, those are using Brents, which are not exactly super powerful for say, and they are same cost, but just much less quality, actually. So that makes it sort of balanced. Like, these squads are not very good, but they have huge availability for a reason. You got the Canadians. They, of course, are a mechanized deck, which have 22 standard infantry squads over the 21 standard squads of 4th Armored, which is fine. Canadians do also, as for support, for tanks, they do have, in fact, the Ram tank, which is going to go into my next subject a little bit later on. But ram tanks are reasonable. However, they don't really have much support other than some few arty pieces, not like the other support units, which I'll get into a bit later, explaining why these other divisions have a reasonable amount of good support units. But the 21st, the 4th Armored has more infantry units than Guards, which is fine. That is a medium tank division. Scots, that is an actual infantry division with some good support units. They have more than the French, another armored division, which actually sort of plays out with hand-to-hand, but the French only has, the 2nd Benelli only has 12 standard infantry squads, which means their effective support units are vital when the 4th Armored, with all their effective support units, are not really necessary. They don't need as much support as amount of infantry. There's also a couple outliers I would like to point out in this list as shown. The Indian Head, while technically only have 10 standard infantry squads, they in fact have 2 cards of these rifles, the exact same rifles, but however, they only have 10 standard infantry. All the other ones, I'll classify them as specialist or support units, such as the Ranger Support, Ranger Assault, and the machine guns. I'm not really including designated machine guns in the list, and the other support units they specialize in a specific role, which they do very well, but they're not all ranged around good infantry squads. And as well, the other large outlier to this same list for standard infantry squads is the SSB, the Commando Regiment, which they have a lot of very veteran. Actually, they only have 4 very veteran standard infantry squads, while all the other infantry squads are, in fact, support and specialist squads. On the other end, with number of advanced infantry, standard infantry, the Axis divisions are really erratic from each other. The Allied divisions more follow like a slope, like a bulge. Like this one has more, this one has less, but it usually makes a bulge. The Axis divisions, it's much more extremes, and with very little outliers in describing their infantry impact. You got their most is the 352nd, which has Osttroopen, S-Osttroopen, Grenadiers, Riflemen, Grenadiers, no Panzer Grenadiers. But they have a huge amount at 35, the 716th, sort of in the same boat with 312. The 9th Armored is my other division I like to talk about who has overperforming infantry for the amount of infantry support they have. They have 24 designated infantry squads, which is a significant amount. Which they have so many Panzer Grenadiers, which Panzer Grenadiers are incredibly effective. Even when unvetted, those 2 LMGs just rip everything apart. They even have mechanized Panzer Grenadiers if you want to have that playstyle. They have also I think they may be the only division that has Storm Pioneers in Battle Phase A to help support them in cities. So this is the other division, I would say, has too much infantry for their infantry supports, which they have all those Panzer IIs, Panzer Is, just a huge amount of infantry support vehicles. So how would I actually change this in order so it would be a bit more balanced? Is actually, some people might consider this as a nerf, some people might consider this buff. Switch these 4 Panzer Grenadiers in motorized vehicles to 2 slots of Grenadiers, just standard Grenadiers, 25-point Grenadiers, which are exactly the same, except they have 9 men and 1 LMG, which are 25 points, which makes it actually, people say, oh, it's not as effective, but much more cheaper. There'll be, I believe there's like, the other division is like 2 cards of 5, maybe 4, which it wouldn't be that overpowered to actually have 2 cards. They usually have 2 cards of 4. Just having them cheaper will actually make it a slight buff. So actually it would be a bit better, and also just limit the number of half-track ones from. So I would change the 3 Panzer Grenadiers in trucks to 2 groups of of grenadiers inside trucks without the Panzerfaust. So 25 points for a grenadier squad is actually quite effective. And then switch from three cards of Panzer Grenadiers and half tracks to two cards of Panzer Grenadiers with half tracks. So you can have either bring in the mechanized or the motorized variant. This is also the reason why I'm also including this division is they're mostly counterparts to each other. They both are light armored divisions. They both have a huge amount of infantry to their infantry support. And now time to talk about their tanks, about the actually bigger elephant in the room, the Hellcat. The problem with the Hellcat is, while it is just an all-good rain, all-rounder anti-tank unit, this unit has also HE rounds at a staggering 1,200 meter range. It makes it so, guess they didn't deploy any tanks? Or that means, now this unit can effectively hit infantry units, including AT guns, from beyond their standard range. I mean, the standard AT gun of the Axis divisions, the PaK-38, only has 1,000 meter range, which means so this Hellcat, a tank destroyer, can take on its counter with no fear of reprisal. So how would I balance out the Hellcat? Remove the HE rounds. Of course, it will probably get a cost price reduction, say from 110 to either 105 or to even just 100. Remove the HE rounds instead of like a no-brainer. Guess I was wrong. It can still be effective versus infantry. It makes it so like, I was wrong. Now I have this dead weight unit. In comparison to, there's also two counterparts I would say that it falls under this role. The M10 tank destroyers of the French, as well as the Marder 3s of the 9th Armored, which again, they're both, the 9th Armored and 4th Armored are both counterparts to each other, but they have way too effective non-infantry support vehicles that are too effective versus infantry. The M10 tank destroyer works fine for the French deck just because the French deck has a huge lack of infantry. They only have mediocre Volkstigers, which don't even have an LMG, which they do come in a half track, but this squad is relatively mediocre. They do have a couple elite and actually good Nueves, which are basically like Grenadiers, except semi-automatic rifles and 2 SMGs. But they do also come in half track, but they're incredibly expensive. The French decks generally feel like they don't have enough infantry units to go around, at least in Battle Phase A, even throughout the game. That's why these Wolverines are relatively balanced, because they have a lack of infantry to support them. They are, in fact, an infantry support. They need that infantry support. They do have Greyhounds like the 4th Armored, which they're not exactly the general all-rounder, closer to just not super effective. They don't have any 1,200 meter range, extremely effective infantry support units. They only have a subpar amount of infantry with a subpar support. Or average support, really, not exactly subpar. Well, the Hellcats as well as 9th Panzer, they both have 1,200 meters effective long-range anti-tank units that can also be excellent anti-infantry support as well. These Martyrs are a bit too effective when supporting infantry, because 4 HE is actually a significant amount. 3 HE is a significant amount. However, they already do have a significant number of support units. While the 9th Panzer doesn't have any 1,200 meter range, they have all of these looks, Panzer 1s, for infantry support. Now on to my last subject, support. I'm going to talk about tanks and the support vehicles in tab. First off, look, 10 armor. It's very effective, has very good gun, very good machine guns, has 10 armor. This 10 armor is key why it makes it so 4th armor is so effective versus Axis divisions. The standard AT gun of the Axis divisions, as stated before, is the Pak-38. While they can't range they have trouble, they cannot range these units, and if they do range them, they have 10 armor. This AT gun has 10 armor penetration. So even their effective firing, maximum effective range, they can't engage these units. This is the only division who has Battle Phase A 10 armored 1,200 meter units. So how would I properly adjust this? Remove the armor from 10 to 9. That's it. Spearhead has Battle Phase B 105 Shermans as well. They are 11 armor, but that's Battle Phase E, when the German army can deploy their medium tanks to effectively engage them. At this range, even the AT guns can't really do much versus these guys. I would say remove these guys' reduce these armors down to from 10 to 9, and potentially remove the availability number of cards from 2 to 1. And that it will still be effective infantry support, but not an almighty one. While my proposal still has them outranging the Pak-38, they can at least with a can hold fire, waiting to get into the closer, and much more able to engage them due to tactically engagements, not hope you get a penetrating hit. Which we're like, why? And for our counterpart, what about the Axis division comparisons? What are in fact the Axis comparisons for this 1,200 meter range? We've got the Butte Cromwell and the Stu-42. The Stu-42 also has 10 armor, but as I stated before, this will be actually in the same boat. The Stu-42 has 10 armor, but the Allied AT guns have 11 armor penetration, which means reducing this from 10 to 9 will mean it will be in the exact same boat as the Stu-42. Just wait and see, try to get a good tactical engagement, and engage. Another argument could be, say, what about Pak-40s and other long-range AT assets? Well, not every long-range AT asset is available in every division, and even then, the 10 armor is quite high, can actually resist quite a bit in order to engage them. The Pak-40, well, why not deploy Pak-40? Most of these divisions do not have a Pak-40, and the ones that do, there's just only one available, and there's two 105s available as a good counterpart. Pak-40 also, there's only one division, I believe, that has two Pak-40s, and that's the SS Panzer Grenadier. So the Pak-40 is not a reliable counter for all divisions. Some have some effective counters, but not all of them. The other HE units are effective, but they do have much less armor. The next highest armor for the Allied side is the Churchill 5, if I remember that number correctly, but it only has 9 frontal armor, which means Pak-38s can engage it if it gets a bit too close. And there's the Butte Cromwell, the Cromwell 6, I believe, the HE Cromwell does only have 7 armor, makes it much more vulnerable if it goes into Pak-38 range. Same thing as well as the Priest, the M7 DD by the Indian Head, and some other divisions that has them in Battle Phase B. That unit only has 4 armor, making it so, oops, got too close, dead if it penetrates and hits. That's why I would say the 10 armor is too high for HE units, which I'm going to roll in with my next topic. 10 armored tanks and such. Let's look at all the tanks in Battle Phase A that has a higher amount of armor than 10 or greater. The Abrams, the M4 Shermans in Indian Head, the Cromwell 7 in Guards, as well as the Ram Tank and the Butte Firefly. The HE power on some of these tanks are just enough to make it so it's very hard to kill these units with a Pak 38 because they can't be penetrated by max range, and they can fire back and kill off these AT guns with no problem. Of course, you can always hold fire, wait to a good advancement, but that's not always capable. And plus, usually a lot of these AT guns do not have any stars of veterancy or officer for 1-star veterancy, so they're a bit inaccurate. So you can either get a lucky hit or you brawl out, and generally you'll still lose out. So what I would say is reduce Abrams armor from 10 to 9 in the same boat. The Spearhead tanks from 10 to 9, or no, Spearhead actually has only 9 armored tanks, which means it's relatively balanced. However, Indian Head has 10 armored tanks, which could be reduced from 10 to 9 as well. However, then there's a couple outliers. Guards armor Cromwell 7. This is a monstrosity can be dealt with, but this division does have a huge amount of support weapons as well. And this, though I will talk about balancing with this division later, it's more comparable to the third Panzer's, not third Panzer, the 116th Panzer. So I will not exactly how you can just Cromwell 7, perhaps generally remove it, but put some veterancy on the Cromwell 5s to go along with this division. But now it comes with the bigger boats, the Ram tank and the Butte Firefly. These tanks, I have no problem with their current armor because they have no HE rounds, which means they only have machine guns to support the infantry, and those are close range anyways. So they're generally not a problem when it comes to fighting infantry. It's the problem with the tanks with the HE values. So their Ram tank and the Butte Firefly are fine, unless you fight the SS Panzer on the one giant airfield map with no infantry cover in the center map. Then that's problematic. But that's map design, not faction battle group design. I believe I forgot to mention the 9th Panzer, the Martyr 3s. How would I adjust these? These guys, there is plenty of infantry support units already in this deck. These Martyr 3s don't need these HE rounds. I would say replace these Martyr 3s with the 21st Panzer. What's it called? Pack half tracks, the S307F pack. These guys have no AP, still has the exact same gun, pretty much. But just put these guys in the 9th Panzer, give it a star of veterancy or even 2, and you got a good anti-tank for that division, or at least for the tank destroyer stat. If you want to have these guys have mobile AT guns. But that was generally how I would say how to balance out the 9th Armored. In quick summary, how would I change guards? Well, not guards, 4th Armored. Remove one of these slots of rifles. Remove the HE from the Hellcats. Reduce the cost of Hellcat. Reduce the armor of the Battle Phase A Shermans, each of the variants. As well as on the 9th Panzer side, replace the anti-tank Martyr 3s with mobile packs. Change the 3 Panzer Grenadiers from motorized vehicles to 2 Grenadiers and motorized vehicles. Reduce one of the Panzer Grenadiers. Maybe, and that's even a maybe even keep all 3 Panzer Grenadiers in half tracks. And that will probably generally how to balance out these divisions. This is Agion saying thank you for watching, and please, if you have any ideas or how alternatives or good ways to adjust some things, please let me know. I'm trying to get these divisions sort of balanced out. I'm trying to push this some sort of form balancing before the next update, which adds in some new commanders, and perhaps maybe even alter the mind of some balance changes of these commanders. I don't even know what they look like, of how to make them a bit more properly balanced. But this is Agion saying thank you for watching. please add in your comments down below and so we can have a proper discussion.